start, I'd like to give a quick shout out to our sponsors who I'm sure are really excited that I just said that. So thank you to Techstars, Honey, Name.com, Downtown Boulder Partnership, and CU for their sponsorship of Boulder Startup Week. Without them, this would not be possible. And now I'd like to hand things over to Becky and Michael. I have a feeling this is going to go by really fast because you two are just really awesome to listen to. So go ahead and take it away. I'm so excited.
Thanks,
oh, no
Ben.
pressure with that. Yeah.
I know, that's a lead up. Do you want to start, Michael, or would you like, or how do you, what would you?
Yeah, let's, well,
Yeah.
you know, I think what's helpful to start is why did we plan this session? And I know for me, Becky, a question I get a lot, I'm an independent brand consultant, and a question I get is like, do I even need branding? Which I feel like is if, you know, you went to a restaurant and you're like, am I even hungry? I don't really know. So I felt like it's a common question, and I think there's some clear answers. So that's why I want to be part of this. Maybe talk about why you wanted to be part of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same. You know, you're an independent consultant. I have a strategy and brand shop here in Boulder called FADA. And same thing, like, I think people come to us a lot of times and they've got a logo and they've got sometimes a website and they're like, hey, I know I need to grow the business. I don't really know much about marketing. Where do I start? What do I need to be thinking about? Do I need a big agency? You know, all of these questions similar to what you just brought up, they come up a lot. And so we felt like it might be helpful for startups just to hear, you know, each of our approaches on branding and our recommendations, and, you know, kind of pivot and talk a little bit about COVID today, since things have changed drastically since we first said we were going to do the session. And really what we want to do is just open this up to a lot of questions. I'm a little bummed we're not in a room together, all of us, so we can just kind of do the audience question thing, but definitely post questions in the side because we want to be helpful to you as much as possible.
Absolutely. And I don't know who COVID is. Maybe he's joining later. I'm not sure what you were talking about.
I had no idea.
So maybe what helps is starting from the beginning. You said a lot of times people will come to you with a logo or a website. I do consulting as well as freelance design. So sometimes people come to me with a logo they hate. Maybe it's 50% of the time, and they say, can we make this better? But a lot of times they don't have a logo at all. I'm curious, is that something you see as well, that someone just says, I have this company, but I don't have anything at all?
Not typically, unless they're brand new starting from scratch. I mean, a lot of times when people come to me, it's, you know, smaller to mid-sized businesses who they've gotten up and running, or they've gotten through the first few phases of work and they are realizing a couple things. One, you know, I know how to sell margaritas, or I now know how to sell keys. I'm referencing my own clients, you know, whatever the case may be, but I don't know a ton about marketing, and I need somebody to help guide me in this part. And also, you know, I've done the basics, but really not sure how to take my brand to the next level or what that even means. And so that's where we sort of come in and start as just consulting, I would say. I don't know. Do you want to kind of talk about your approach, Michael, when you start working with new clients and how you guide them with branding?
Absolutely. Well, I think what helps too is to set sort of some common terms, because you know, as people who work in branding, marketing, advertising, whatever, we're really good at just making up words that that don't have any meaning. Yeah, and they're intimidating.
Yeah.
And they mean something different today than they did yesterday. So a lot of times I get the question, people are like, what even is branding? And my answer for this is it's what makes you memorable, what makes your business distinct, you know, from other people in the same space, whether you're selling like margaritas or pizza or what have you. Food, I guess, if you're selling food, which is like the only thing on my mind ever. But it's also what gives people trust. I think especially now, you know, people are going to buy something that they can feel comfortable buying. And it's not going to be like a question like, is this going to work? Is this going to be the thing I thought it was? Is this going to taste how I thought it was? So a lot of times when people say, do I need branding? Sometimes they're talking about a logo, but I think a lot of the times it's just like, do I need a way to position myself? Do I need a way to stand out? My answer is always yeah. Because otherwise, how do people know what you're doing, what you're selling?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, for me, it's sort of one of the things that comes to mind is just dressing the part, letting your freak flag fly. So what I mean by that is, like, especially as a new brand, and you're building up your brand, you're building your product, you're getting yourself ready to go to market. And the fact of the matter is there's very likely competitors who are out there who have been there longer than you have, maybe more established. And so to your point, Michael, you want to build trust. Another way I would say that is build confidence. And in my opinion, you know, a lot of times people ask, like, when do I need to work on my brand identity, which is one of these industry terms. It means having a logo, having fonts, having colors that are always set, you know, having a website that looks like your social media feed, which looks like your sales sheets and so on. From my perspective, I think that's something you always do from the beginning, because, you know, you want to kind of walk bigger than you are and show up bigger than you are. And to me, that means being polished as a brand and presenting yourself in a way that's really, really true to who, like, to the soul of your business and what it is you're trying to do and why you're trying to do it. I think if you can show up in a way that is, you know, the most overused word, authentic, but in a way that's really true to who your business is, then you have a better shot at connecting with customers and obviously selling stuff, which is the whole goal at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Even if it's maybe not lame, but feels nerdy or boring to you. You know, I've had some clients in the past say, like, can you make me look cool? And I think they get annoyed by my answer, because I'm like, well, it's all about who you are, right? And it's like, maybe you're not supposed to be. Like, I learned many years ago, I was like, I'm not supposed to be cool. I'm not going to try that. You know, I'm going to stop dressing like Kurt Cobain. It doesn't work for me. And so, like, I had to just own up to who I was. And totally. I think that's important. And especially when you have a startup, it's like, you're not really well established. Maybe you're worried. I think there's a lot of fear. You know, am I going to show up right? Am I going to look the part? And I think the job of someone who's doing branding for you as a startup is that they can kind of get to the core of what you're all about. And maybe that's something you knew, maybe it's not. But I feel like that's maybe one thing to look for, right? As you're getting started, is, can this person interpret, or company or whatever, can they interpret who I am, what I'm all about, and put that out in the world in a way that's meaningful and memorable.
Totally. And to that point, you know, I'm sure a lot of you are considering working with an agency or with freelancers or a smaller company, whatever the case may be, somebody to help you with your marketing and with your design. And my advice would be, as you're vetting partners, if they're not talking to you first about your brand strategy, your brand positioning, or, you know, said more simply, like, why you exist in the world and why people should care about your product, then chances are you should move on from that agency and find somebody who starts in that place, because you would never want to do, you know, brand identity design or, you know, logos or whatever is needed, social media, anything from a marketing perspective, unless it's grounded in who you are and as a business and the why. I mean, it's where we start in this line of work. And if you don't hear that in meetings, then I would move on and try and look for a different partner. Definitely. It's also something hard to do on your own. Like, that part of work, Michael and I were talking about this before the session, and a lot of times we go in with clients and we sit down and we're like, okay, tell us about your business. Like, what do you really stand for? And why is it that you do what you do every single day? And a lot of times they start sort of like rattling off lists of, well, we like to sell this and we like to do this. And it's very what based. And we end up turning into armchair psychologists is sort of how we joke about it. But, sure, you know, we shrink it up with you and we get deep. Like, why are you doing what you're doing? Because right there is the gold that's central to your business, that if you can bring that outwards from like a positioning and brand strategy outward into, how does this show up in design? And then how does this show up in advertising, if that's something you want to do? Then it really is meaningful and authentic, the worst word.
Well, it's a process, right? I think that's what we're getting to is branding. You know, it has like ing on the end. It's like something that's happening. It's an action. It's not just make me a brand and go away. It is this uncovering. There's some psychological aspects. There's emotional aspects to it. Because like you said, Becky, everyone's selling something. Like everyone's like, well, I'm selling this thing. Like, we're selling stuff. Everyone is doing that. It really is that deeper question of why, which is more than just a logo, and it's more than just like whatever picture you posted on Instagram. So you just use this term agency, and I feel like that's another one of those confusing terms that people ask me. I'm sure you get this question too. They're interested in working with someone. They know they need some sort of brand, right? Which is like, just how do they show up? And then they say like, well, are you an agency? Do I need an agency? Is it a design shop? Is it a freelancer or consultant? Like, I feel like maybe we should spend a few minutes talking about what these words mean. Like for you, what does an agency even mean? What's the definition of that word?
Yeah, I mean, for an agency, maybe I just kind of go to my background. You know, before I launched Fada, which was about 3 years ago, I spent about 8 years before that working at creative ad agencies here in Boulder. So, you know, when I think of agency, I think of places like Crispin Porter and Bogusky and Made and, you know, a lot of other shops, Grenadier, that I've worked at. These are, you know, companies that have account people and creative people, and sometimes media people, strategists, production people, all under one roof. And so when, you know, you as a client come in the front door and, you know, you pitch your business or you talk about your business to this agency, they then in turn can pitch to win your business. And that's been the model for a very long time. It's been very successful. I would argue right now it's a little challenging because especially the bigger advertising agencies are struggling to sort of redefine themselves and figure out their place in the world now, especially, I mean, it's going to be very interesting to watch post-COVID, but, you know, budgets have come down, accountability is up, and, you know, the overhead at a big agency is a very challenging thing that a lot of our friends are dealing with regularly, right? Then I think there's a number of smaller sort of startups, if you will. I would count myself in this group. Fada is a freelance agency. So what that means is I'm the only employee and I bring in teams of freelancers and contractors for every project. We operate like an agency, meaning, you know, there is a custom team and, you know, there's a group of people who cares about your business and is dedicated to your business and running things, but I don't have to pay everybody or rent. And so, you know, I don't have to pay benefits and things. And so we're able to keep costs down. And then there are, you know, independent contractors like Michael, you know, who you're steering your own ship. So you can probably better describe that than I.
Well, in full disclosure, Becky, right? Like, you've hired me, right?
Yeah.
We work together.
Totally.
I work with agencies and shops, but I think you define an agency really well. It's a place where, for better or for worse, you're maybe paying for them to all get a catered lunch, and that can be great, right? Because maybe those people at the agency are sitting around, right, talking about your company, your brand, but there's a lot of people involved versus, yeah, a smaller shop where it's a tight group of individuals, or maybe more of like that Hollywood style, forming a team where just like what you said for Fada, you bring in the right people for the project. And I love working in capacity because I really do think it gives the best results, especially for a startup where, you know, typically by definition, right, a startup's not going to have a ton of cash to spend on their branding, even though it's important. It doesn't mean you always have the money for it. So you could go as a startup. I think you can go with a bigger agency, and you know that you're getting a bigger team and maybe a world-renowned name. I don't think there's any warranties on brands though. So I feel like if you come back 2 years later, it's like a big agency and you're like, hey, I don't like this, you're still out of luck. It's not like, you know, you buy like a TV from Sony and they'll say like, we'll fix it. Right. But then you could go to a freelancer or a consultant, which you know, might just be one person, right? And that's going to be pretty inexpensive. So what do you think, Becky? And this is one of the questions that someone texted me, like, what do you think about 99 designs? Or I think Fiverr is maybe the other one. You can just pay like $5 for a logo. Is that branding? What do you think about that?
I mean, I don't know. I want to be nice. I mean, no disrespect. You know, I think sometimes you need to do something like that. Like if you're just getting started and you're like, I need a logo, I need to look like something, I need to get out there, there's a place for it. But, you know, in my opinion, it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about like having a strategy and being intentional and doing things for very specific reasons that fit your business plan and your goals and why you started doing this thing in the first place. From my perspective, I think you need a partner. You don't need a website or somebody that's super remote that isn't going to ask you questions, that isn't going to get in the weeds with you and help you to grow your business. So, you know, maybe initially just to get things up and running, but once you get serious about wanting to go to market and wanting to attract customers, I would say no.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point you made, Becky. When someone at a startup, you know, if you're the founder, maybe you're in charge of marketing, but you're the person in charge of figuring out your branding situation. Maybe something to look for is, do you want more of a partner, or are you looking for just someone to knock out a few things for you because you have the vision? Because you could say like, yeah, I just picked a font. Like I'll say as a person with a graphic design background, my opinion on, well, Fiverr specifically is fuck them, because that's just too cheap. $5 is like, that's less than like a Happy Meal. Yeah, and it's just, you know, is it going to be good? At least 99 designs, I think maybe someone could get paid literally more than $5. You find $5 on the street, you might just leave it there. So I don't know if that's really worth it, but it's worth asking yourself, do you want a partner, someone who's going to be with you for the long run, or at least for a little while, and who's maybe going to be interested in what you're doing more than, you know, making a logo or making social media posts or building your website, whatever, making your product packaging, whatever form your branding might take. So I think that's a really good way for people at startups to decide what they want. There's nothing inherently wrong with paying just a few dollars for a logo, or just picking a font from, you know, Comic Sans is a great one. Just like make that your logo. But if you want,
never use Comic Sans.
Comic Sans was cool. Comic Sans was cool, and I think
a very long time ago.
10 years from now, we're going to look back and be like, why are we not doing more Comic Sans just in logos? Like Helvetica's had its time. But, you know, if you want to get in that conversation with someone, I think you go on Fiverr, they're going to be like, I'm cutting you off. We're not talking about this. And they're certainly not doing the strategy that people like you and I do of asking those questions, trying to understand the competition so you can look different, trying to understand what you're all about so that you feel good putting that brand out there in the world. So that is definitely a difference between the 99 designs, consultants, freelancers, and agencies, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you're sort of touching on something too, and it's like when you go with something like Fiverr or any of those platforms, it gets you into the space where you're just acting tactically. You're like, okay, I know I need to get some social posts out there, or I know I need a logo, or I know I need this one thing and that one thing. And what ends up happening is you have a bunch of shit and none of it's connected and none of it looks dialed. And that's where I feel like the right partner, I'll just say partner, because it doesn't matter if it's a freelance consultant or an agency or smaller shop, whatever. The right partner for you as a startup is somebody that's going to be able to guide you, you know, and say, listen, let's pull back. Like, what's the big picture here? What are you trying to accomplish? What are your goals? Who are you talking to? Who do you want to talk to and why? And then figure out, you know, to come together with a real marketing plan and an identity system and, you know, the whole package, which doesn't need to cost $1 bazillion to do it right. But again, it comes back to the sort of fake it till you make it and walk bigger than you are thing. I'm a huge proponent of that.
So one question that we had talked about and actually just got asked in the Q&A is sort of around picking the right partner. And teams are getting larger, and you know, you're doing a website, you're doing social posts, you have print ads, you have all sorts of different channels. So I think when you're picking a partner, whoever it is, make sure they're not a jerk, right? Make sure they can work with lots of different people. So how does that coordination happen? Like, I feel like obviously now we have Zoom and there's email and we're meeting up on things, but what can you speak about, Becky? Because Albert asked this question, how do you think about coordinating branding between different roles and channels? So I feel like working together, right? Having just good communication is maybe a foundation there. What else would you say is a necessity when you're working across channels?
I mean, it's interesting. I think the working across channels, you need to have somebody who's a good puppeteer. So whether it's someone internally at your organization or you hire somebody to do it for you, somebody who's very good at, again, taking that big picture and the marketing plan and your business plan and all of that and saying, okay, here's the partners we need to tap in, here's the right people for this job, but then somebody who can manage that. I think a lot of people, in my experience, who are launching new businesses are very good at vision and very good at seeing the big picture, but have a harder time executing and doing the day-to-day pieces of managing a team and managing partners. So I think that's something either you hire for internally or you bring on an agency partner who can do it for you. I don't know.
That's a great point.
How would
Well,
you?
I would agree, because I think, you know, when it comes down to it, a lot of people do not want to do that
No.
management. So I feel like that's important to look for in a partner, for branding. Do they want to do that work? Are they even aware of it? Because I think with experience, I think we're both experienced enough to have been fucked over,
Yeah.
or just had miscommunications, even our own fault, or something we just didn't realize. I think that's how you learn, is you mess something up, and then you say, oh well, I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen. So I think with having different teams, people spread out, which is, you know, it was already the new normal, right? That's
Mhm.
already how things were happening anyway. You have lots of different people working on lots of different activities for one brand. You have to ask yourself, when you're hiring someone or finding a partner, do they want to be part of that group, or do they just want me to tell them what to do and
Yeah.
they'll knock that out? But do I have to manage them, or does someone else? Because someone has to send an email with a calendar invite, and, you know, just think ahead about schedules and make a spreadsheet. I love making spreadsheets. Do you love making spreadsheets?
As long as they're in Google Sheets, yes, I do. I'm a
Yes.
nerd. I am a fucking nerd. I love that stuff.
Well, and you can use cool
Organization, yeah,
colors.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, I want to talk a little bit about picking a partner, because you and I were chatting about this before the session, and you know, I think that's probably something that's on a lot of your minds. And you know, I would say, if you're, you know, you can reach out to find somebody to help you with your branding. You know, cast a wide net if you feel like it, if that's your process. Or I actually just had a new business call the other day, and he was like, listen, I know I should be talking to a lot of people, but I don't want to fucking waste my time, and I just want somebody I like, you know, so it doesn't matter. I think he touched on my sentiment, which is go with your gut and your instincts. Like, you need a partner who you like, who you get good vibes from, and you feel like is going to get in the weeds with you in your business. I think that's a good thing. There's a lot of clients who view marketing people or advertising people as vendors, and it's like they just dole work out to them, and they're like, that's what you do, and this is my business. I think the best relationships are not vendor relationships, they're partner relationships, where, you know, I can think of a couple of my main clients where, you know, I'm in the weeds with them every single day, and that helps us be better as marketers and branding people, and helps us help you succeed. I don't know if you had anything to add to that.
I agree. I agree. I think my best client partnerships are partnerships. It's one where I care about their business. I want them to be successful, and they care about what I'm doing as well. And they realize I'm not just, you know, a person on the other end of an email, or maybe like a robot, but someone who, you know, has a life and has an opinion, and they want to draw on that.
Yeah.
And so I do think, you know, if you're running any size business, but certainly a startup, you're doing yourself a disservice if you're not using your partnerships to that full advantage, and asking for people's opinions, and valuing their feedback. So I agree, go with your gut, because you're not going to want to work with someone even for a week, a couple of weeks, you know, whatever the minimum amount of time a project might be. If like they're a jerk, or like they don't care about you, or you don't like them, when we could meet in person, you didn't like the way they smelled, you're just like, no, I'm not doing this. So you have to, that's a real concern, Becky. I don't know why you're laughing at
Yeah.
me for that.
It's very on brand for you, Michael.
Absolutely. Yeah, smell is important. I have a candle
Yes.
going right now, you know, so you can probably sense it just through the Zoom
Of course.
chat. But those are important things to consider. You know, if you kind of have a reservation, then it's probably not a good fit. I've definitely had people come to me and say, like, I don't feel like looking at anyone else. And I'm also always happy when someone says, hey, I'm looking at, you know, 3, 5 different people.
Totally.
Maybe what do you think is the max? If someone's like asking their friends, Googling, checking like review sites to see who to work with, like what's the most amount of companies you should look to partner with for branding?
That is a personal question. You know, like, I'm the type, if it were me, I'm the type of person where I don't do an exhaustive search. I'm sort of, I know it
Mm-hmm.
when I see it, and then I'm good. Yet then when I have things going on in my personal life, I need to like workshop them with my community a little bit. So, you know, it really just depends on your comfort level. Like, would it make you feel better if you talk to 10 shops and you're like, yeah, that's the one? Cool, then do that. If you're, you know, like this other guy I just talked to the other day who said, you know, I don't want to talk to anybody else. And it's like, great, that's your process. That's cool.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So something else that we were talking about that we just got asked in the Q&A is, how do you approach a new project where you don't know anything about that industry? And when we were talking before, I think we both agreed maybe it doesn't matter if you've worked in that industry. What's your thought on that?
I don't think it matters at all. I mean, part of why I love this job, and I'm sure that's the same for you, is like professional ADD, where I just get to shapeshift into different versions and different companies and different industries. I mean, personally, I've worked on everything from, you know, ski resorts to booze to rubber floor mats. I mean, that one came through years ago and earlier in my career. And I was like, how am I going to care about rubber floor mats? Fast forward to presenting strategy to a room full of very conservative men in the middle of Kansas. And they all started crying after the strategy presentation. And then we had lunch under a shade tree, you know, like you just get into it. The process, I will quote my dear friend and mentor, Jeff Graham. He would say, live the brand. What that means is you just got to immerse yourself. So when I was working on Winter Park, I went up and went and skied Winter Park all the time. You know, sometimes you got to drink a lot of booze. It's a tough job. You know, you just got to get in. I joke, sort of, but you know, you got to do the research, just get your head in that space. I mean, I think there is something to be said for picking somebody outside your category to work on your brand, because we don't have the baggage of living and breathing your category every single day. I don't know. What would you say, Michael?
Yeah, I would agree. I'd say maybe in choosing a partner, it goes back to that. Are they along for the journey? Are they willing to learn? Especially if you're a startup, maybe you're doing something innovative, something that hasn't been done before. And so can you really expect that everyone's going to know, you know, exactly how to solve that? But an anecdote for me would be when I moved to Boulder, I was really lucky in the agency I was working at. We worked on the Upslope Brewing branding, like the can design and the logo. And like, I didn't drink beer. I still barely drink beer. Like the beer in Boulder is great. Like, don't at me, like don't hate on me for this, but like, I'm not like a big beer guy. And I definitely don't like IPAs. I like a bitter taste, but like an IPA is not for me. So in working on the branding, it was something like I didn't know shit about. And I had to, you joke about drinking beer, but like I can drink about 2 beers and then I'm useless. So it wasn't really a very efficient way to go about doing this design work. But I think Upslope got a really different look for their brand simply because I was kind of ignorant of what all the tropes were, what the cliches were. And I didn't lean into that. I didn't say like, well, let me just look at what everyone else is doing. I think I was too blasted to even do that research because I was just drinking their beer all the time, which is, it's great beer, folks, like buy some Upslope beer. But I didn't know much about it. And I think that was a real benefit. You know, it put me outside of my comfort zone. So I had to learn. And I think if your branding partner isn't going to learn, they're not going to try, they're not going to eat your food, drink your drink, try your product, whatever it is, like that to me would be a red flag if they weren't interested in learning about your space and specifically whatever product you're selling as a startup.
Totally. I mean, I think as outsiders, when we don't know a product, like outsiders are observers. They watch, they take it all in, and you know, we can come in without bias. And so, yeah, I'm a proponent of bringing somebody from outside your zone. There's another question here. What are the top 10 questions that startups should ask themselves about branding? What would you add to that?
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Should ask themselves. Well, you know, I think it's always important to look at whatever else is out there, what other brands exist, and just look at, why do I like these brands, and ask yourself why. And it might be something like, I like the font in their logo, I like their photography, I like the CEO, but looking at the competition, not necessarily doing the same thing, but just knowing what else is happening in your space, I think is maybe, that would be my number one, is to just know what else is happening with similar companies. What would you add to that?
I would say in most cases, you know, if you're going through a branding process, make sure, I'm kind of straddling the fence here. Like for a lot of startups, you know, mine is a good example. Mine is a very personal, like the name Fada was the name I had for my dad. So the logo is made out of his handwriting that I pulled from cards because he's no longer alive. That was a very personal thing. In most cases, businesses are not that personal, even though you're putting so much of yourself personally into them. And I bring that up because a lot of times people go through a branding process and they're like, again, it needs to be rooted in strategy, but a lot of times they'll be like, well, this isn't, I don't identify with this necessarily. And it's sometimes branding isn't about you, it's about your company. And so being able to separate yourself from it can be helpful. So ask yourself, like, you have to have your own bullshit radar, you know, like, is this something that I'm just designing for me? And also, you know, is it something that really is fitting a need with my customers, and that is it something that they're going to relate to? We go through this, you know, I do all the advertising for the Rio Grande Mexican restaurants, and they would tell you themselves that, you know, the leadership team is a bunch of old white dudes. And so there's times when we present creative and, you know, they're like, well, I don't get it. And I'm like, well, yeah, but you're not the target, you know, we're not trying to talk to you. We're trying to talk to a 27-year-old. And so, you know, those types of conversations, being able to separate yourself a little bit.
For sure. I'm working with a skincare company in Boulder, and skincare is, you know, predominantly for a female presenting audience. And it's a lot of guys at this company. And I think when something doesn't resonate with them as far as what should their logo look like, we're doing, you know, their whole branding, their strategy, their logo, their packaging. An answer I give is the same one that you said, which is, you know, if it's not resonating with you, maybe that's okay. Maybe that's even a good thing. Because a lot of times what you're selling, it's not for you. If it was, you wouldn't be selling it. So I think definitely that note you brought up, is it solving a need? Is it making someone's life better?
Right.
It goes back to maybe that deeper core meaning of, why does my company even exist? You need to ask yourself that. Maybe a practical, like a less emotional aspect. Something else I'd say is like on that top 10 is just your budget. So to be honest with yourself, and to ask questions. I think when you're interviewing, you know, possible partners is really important, because it's not just whatever project you're doing. If you think you need a how-to video for your website, you know, it's a whole lot more most of the time than someone just picks up their iPhone and they film it. And then what do you do after that? How do you get the word out? Are you paying for advertising? Do you need to pay for other collateral elements to support it? So I think looking at your budget, the same way you would do for like maybe a home renovation, right? It's like you want to remodel your bathroom and you think it's going to cost X, but it's going to cost more, and you know that. And there's going to be some unforeseen things once the people get into the walls, right, into the bones of your house. And I think a brand is the same way. You think you just need a website, but it turns out you might need an app, or you might just think your website is going to have illustrations, but it's going to have photography. So there's always hidden costs, and I think a good branding partner is going to be experienced enough to say, hey, you know, you're going to have to spend some more money here. Hopefully, you don't feel like you're getting gouged, but you know, that's where the spreadsheet comes back, and you got to add up all those costs.
Yeah.
So here's go ahead.
I was going to go. What question were you going to do?
I was going to say, do the same from Makiba. We're experiencing a new normal. Do the same rules apply? Are there new ones in the marketplace? Because I think that's a good segue from, you know, as you're finding a partner, how aware are they of how things are changing? And so maybe that's just to actually go back to that last question. Another thing I'd add is just, is this company, not necessarily they have to have the experience of your industry, but are they connected? Like, do they know what's going on? Are they interested in going on, whether that's going on social media, reading, I don't know, Atlantic, New Yorker, like whatever magazine, just to understand how people are thinking. So Becky, how do you feel things are changing now? Like, what are the new rules for the space we're in today?
I mean, this gets more into marketing and innovation in my mind. You know, I just went through a really interesting sort of unexpected case study with the Rio, where for a long time, I've worked on this brand on and off for 8 years. And for a long time, we've been sort of hammering a food story, because everybody for so long thought the Rio's food was shit. And they had actually done a lot to improve their food story, and a lot of innovation was going on, and they just weren't getting credit for it. So that's where we've been focusing. You know, we always knew that the Marg was like the thing, but we just weren't really talking about it so much. And then, you know, you hit quarantine and Governor Polis approves takeout booze. And I basically had to let go of my team for 2 months to keep things floating. And so I take over our social media and start posting shitty pictures of, you know, the 6-pack of Rio Margs. And like was blown away by engagement and love and loyalty and fanaticism for this marg in that it came in like this really shitty plastic bottle. Like people lost their shit over it. And this has gone on over all of quarantine. And it was a good lesson for me and for the whole team to just say, hey, you know, like we have this thing that is at the core of our business. And, you know, we just presented a new marketing strategy this morning. It was all about the core, you know, it's essential. It's what people love. And so I would say what's changed now is now I don't think is the time for innovation's sake. Like if you're innovating to fulfill a need state that's coming out of COVID and, you know, in this post-COVID life or living with COVID life, however you want to call it, great. But if you're innovating just to bring some new products to market right now for shits and giggles, this isn't the time. Like I would take a hard look at your business and ask yourself, you know, what is it that really people care most about right now that we offer? And I would put everything behind that, just fewer, simpler, better things, and just to protect yourself. No,
Mm-hmm.
what would you say?
I would agree. I think focus on your core is also something to know going into branding for the first time for your company, but also branding is a process. So it's something you should, I think, always be revisiting is what are we best at? Another food company I work with, Pizzeria Locale in Denver, you know, they have a ton of different menu items, right? It's more than just pizza, and their atmosphere, I think, like the experience of going into the pizzeria, such a huge part of their, you know, the tastiness appeal, I think, of their pizza is like it's in this like specially designed oven that like cooks your pizza perfectly, and thinking about how do you bring that home for people and how do you still get that some of that same experience, that's been at the core of, I think, a lot of their marketing recently. And we're talking about marketing. I think marketing's kind of the same as branding, isn't it? Marketing,
it's the
advertising.
Same thing.
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's
that's
telling
why we
people
called
who
it
you
a
are.
strategy and brand shop. Like everything is your brand, from your logo to your website to your social to your advertising to the shirt you wear to how you carry yourself to how your employees speak to people. You know, it's all part of the brand. It's all one ecosystem that needs to work together. Yeah.
Yeah, the way you talk, and I think whatever makes your product unique, whatever that is. If you don't know what it is and you're paying for branding, I think maybe you're paying too soon. I would advise anyone who's looking to either refresh their branding or just start brand new, kind of like check in with yourself and see, what do I think is the main thing I'm selling and why is it special? Why is it important? Because that's going to be the most lasting aspect of the brand. And it's always going to be the thing that you're kind of coming back to in your advertising, your marketing, your social media, pretty much everything.
Yeah, totally. There was another question that I saw in the feed, and it was from someone asking or mentioning that they have two disparate products that their company puts out, not connected. Like, how do you handle that as a company? How do you do branding in that instance? And you know, I think that there are sort of two ways you can approach that question or that situation. You know, if you're putting them out, let's say you're company A and company A puts out products B and C, company A's story should be able to include both of those products. So while these two products might be completely separate, you can unify them through like a you know, a higher why. You know, I'm trying to think of a tangible example to make this simple. It'll come to me, but you know, that's sort of like the branded house is what the marketing-y term would be. You know, you have like a master brand with some other products. Procter and Gamble is a wonderful example of it. You know, you have P&G and P&G has a lot of products underneath. You know, or you're just a house of brands. You know, there's no connecting at the top and you just have a lot of different brands that don't directly link to each other from a branding perspective. So I think, you know, to really answer that question, you need to dig in with you and figure out, you know, how your business is set up and what you're trying to achieve. So I would say that in that situation, get somebody who has a good understanding of strategy to start with you as you know, as a first step.
Well, and having someone outside of your company is so helpful for that. I find when my clients ask me a question that's very similar, and I see now in the chat, Jennifer asked that, you know, when you have two different sort of target audiences, I think when you're too close to the brand, it can be really tough, and you just say like, I don't understand how these could ever coexist in the same world. But
Yeah.
by bringing in someone like us, like an agency, whomever, that's outside of your company, a lot of times it can be really, really quick. They'll say, oh, I see how these fit together. It's this way. Jennifer's question is kind of funny because she said one customer group needs science support, the other hates scientists. I just want to know more about that second group of people who hate scientists. Maybe we'll save that for another
For
Zoom
like
session.
after.
but I think another sort of way to handle that is to be honest with your audience. Don't try to hide that you're, you know, that one company selling two different things. Don't try to hide that you have two different target audiences. And you see websites, right? It'll be like, are you this group or are you that group? You know, you might have different social accounts, but you have to be out there. You have to be transparent and honest. So I think a big part of branding is not necessarily never thinking the audience is stupid, right? It's just people are busy. So acknowledging people don't have time to understand your brand, and it's how do you make this simple for them?
Simple.
How do you help your audience maybe self-select the group they're in to make their experience with your product that much easier? And then I think it becomes very clear, you know, how to handle something like that.
Yeah. We're almost out of time. We've got like 4 minutes.
I have one question.
Cool.
that was sent to me. It's have you ever fired? I'm going to ask you this question, Becky. Have you ever fired a client because you realized it wasn't a good fit or the expectations were unreasonable?
Woo.
Yeah.
I have fired clients when I was at agencies. Since starting Fada, I've turned down a piece of business once, which felt extremely ballsy to do as a startup, but they were asking me to do something, you know, they were like, here's the ad I want, this is the layout I want, and just need you to make it pretty. And I was like, mad respect, but that is not what we do. We're not just an executor that way, we're a partner. So no, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would say my experience is the same. Although, you know what, I'll be honest, like a lot of times I will execute as long as I feel connected. I think I won't work with someone who I just couldn't support for like moral reasons or like my own ideology.
Right.
So I think, again, it's always important to just find someone who's actually like believes in whatever you're doing, whatever you're selling. That's so important. But I think also, like, when it comes down to sort of price and that amount that you should be engaged, if I know that I'm too busy, right? If I have too many other projects going on, I'll tell someone like, I'm sorry, I wish I had time to do this, but I would be doing you a disservice. So I think, again, you want that honesty and transparency from your partners when it comes to branding, because I'm not going to just, you know, try to do something in 5 minutes, say, oh, I spent all week on this. Like that's bullshit. And
totally.
I would hope any client would see that. So always look for someone who's going to be honest, who's gonna maybe turn you down. But advice I'd give to a startup is if an agency says, hey, we're too expensive, we're too busy, ask them, who do you recommend I talk to instead?
Always. Yes.
Always ask.
Yep. Because they'll do it. Like the good ones will do it. They're happy to recommend people to you.
Yeah, they're not afraid of saying, hey, this person's really good at this. You know, they'll be able to give you a fair price, give you the time you need, whatever it is. But the community, the creative community around branding, advertising, marketing, all that, it's pretty interconnected. And I think if you just ask, people are willing to help.
People are to help. Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely.
Ben, should we stop talking?
now is like the perfect time for me to jump in.
Okay.
So I'm actually very sad because I want this conversation to continue. And when all of this is over, I need more of this conversation. So whether it's at a bar or at a meetup or something, I need to hear more about this. But
it'll be at a bar.
For now,
at a bar. Yeah.
It'll be at a bar.
For now, we'll have to stop, unfortunately, because we have another marketing track event starting up. Real quick, though, I know that a lot of folks still have questions. I appreciate everyone writing in. How can they keep in contact with you, each of you? Yeah, real quick.
Yeah, just shoot me an email. I'm not on Twitter. So I'm just not. Becky, BECKY at Fada, which is FADDUH.com. Is the best way.
People can talk to me. I have a website, Hello MB, like Michael Benjamin. they can email me from there. We're always, both of us are totally open to answering questions and helping people out. And
Yeah.
thank you everyone for tuning in and spending time with us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. We really appreciate it. Wish we could see you in person.
Thanks y'all so much. I really appreciate it. This was so much fun. Again, really sad that we have to cut things off. But I learned something new today. If there's $5 on the ground, Michael will not go for it. So
just follow me around. Follow me around. I'm just leaving money on the floor all the
time. But really appreciate all the interactive session. I think these kind of events, even though through Zoom, are really valuable to get folks involved. So thank you so much for giving back. And I will unfortunately have to close the chapter for this one, but hopefully we'll have another chapter soon.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye.